Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing fine. Today I'm going to be going through CD purchases from charity shops or thrift stores as you call them in America, and all of these were £1 or less, apart from a couple of them which were £1.50. Okay, cracking on then. It's first up Bob Marley and the Wailers, Natty Dread. This was put out on the Ireland Tuff Gong label, and this was a £1.50 purchase. It's Bob Marley's 7th album from 1974, and it's the first time he was given top billing over the Wailers, and this was following the departure of his colleagues Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh. I must say I do miss the beautiful three-part harmonies that they had together, and it's a style of Jamaican music that I particularly like. In their place, we've got the I.R.S, female backing musicians, and it gives the album a very different feel to Catch a Fire and Burning. The lyrics are becoming far more political at this time, at the same time as the music's becoming very rock-centric in an effort to try and appeal to Western audiences. I must say also it's strange to hear the studio version of No Woman, No Cry, having grown up hearing the live version. And moving on, we've got the staple singers, Come Up in Glory, the best of the VJ years, 1955 to 1961 on the Charly label. And this one comes in a nice little digipack. And this was the other £1.50 purchase. And this is incredibly moving music, led by pop staples, blues influenced guitar playing. There's very minimal occasional rhythm accompaniment, and the real revelation is the deep contralto vocals of Mavis Staples, who on the earliest of these recordings was just 15 years of age. She surely has one of the great voices of the last 60, 70 years. If you think you don't like gospel, then I'd say check out the tracks Swing Down Chariot and also Help Me Jesus, which just make me marvel at the beauty of them. Next up, it's an album with a very silly name, Wee Wee CC Ya Ya Dada by Madness. This was their 2012 album. It's got artwork, if you can call it that, by Peter Blake, the man responsible for the cover of Sgt. Pepper, although this isn't anywhere near as good. This album gets slightly overlooked because it followed on from a late period classic by Madness, which was called The Liberty of Norton Folgate, which was a bit of a concept album and included a 10-minute plus centrepiece telling the social history of a small part of the East End of London. I think Wee Wee was all about proving yet again that they could write punchy, really catchy pop songs, and in retrospect I think it's quite a good album, and certainly Madness can be ranked among the best bands ever to come out of London, up there with the Kinks and Ian Dury and the Blockheads. And next up, it's an album by Hoyt Axton, Flashes of Fire, Hoyt's Very Best, 1962 to 1990, and this was put out on the Raven label in Australia. So it was pretty impressive to find this for 50 pence in a charity shop near to where I live. It's an excellent overview of his career, and his music straddles between folk and country music, and the quality of the songwriting lends itself to cover versions in various formats, so rock, pop and country, for example. It does start off very poorly, and I was beginning to wonder what the rest of the CD was going to be like. It's a decidedly lo-fi live recording from 1962 of Greenback Dollar, which was a hit at the time for the Kingston Trio, but the rest of the CD soon picks up, and you get some masterful songs on here. So for example, The Pusher, which was a hit for Steppenwolf, Joy to the World, which was covered by Three Dog Night, also Never Been to Spain, which was also covered by Three Dog Night. In my opinion, Hoyt Axton's masterpiece, Evangelina. There's also the No No song, which was a minor hit when covered by Ringo Starr as well. And you also get a nice 12-page booklet included as well. And next up, it's a various artists compilation on the Earthworks label, Rye Rebels. And Rye music originated in western Algeria in the area around the port of Oran. And this is a 1980s compilation which includes some evocative vocals, but it's slightly spoilt for me by the very dated synthesizer backing provided by Rashid Baba. And next, another Doors compilation to add to my collection, The Best of the Doors, which does exactly what it says on the tin. And there's the tracks that are included. So no deep cuts at all. The nearest you get to a deep cut would be the live version of Roadhouse Blues, which isn't as good as the version on the Morrison Hotel album. And it's a good introduction to the band, though, if you've not got any of their material. But I would recommend getting a little clamshell compilation which includes all their studio albums, which you can pick up for £20 new. And this is the one I'm on about. Inside you get a little booklet and also reproductions of all of their studio albums. And I'll show you all of those. Excuse me, I've been suffering a bit with a cold for the last few days, so we soldier on. And next up we've got Bob Dylan and Saved, which is a 1980 album, and it was the second of his albums that he recorded after converting to Christianity. His genuine love of gospel music, I don't think can be argued with. You only have to listen to some episodes of his Theme Time Radio Hour show from a few years ago, and also read his recent book on the philosophy of modern song. And certainly his vocals and the band performances are some of the strongest of his career. The lyrics may make reference to religious imagery, but it's without ever descending into sort of happy, clappy, cliched gospel god rock. The stellar band lineup includes some fantastic musicians. So you've got Jim Keltner on drums, Spooner Oldham on keyboards, Fred Tackett on guitar, and I'd argue that Covenant Woman and Pressing On are arguably the most heartfelt and moving performances of his entire career. Next we've got a Rolling Stones compilation called More Hot Rocks, Big Hits and Fazed Cookies, and this was put out on the ABKCO label. It's a double compilation. Originally came out in 1972, and it followed up the more successful well-known Hot Rocks compilation. It includes a number of early tracks which hadn't at that time been released in America. So for example, you've got Fortune Cookie and Poison Ivy, which only appeared in the UK on a Saturday Club compilation from 1964. But certainly there's nothing essential there. You also get some album tracks from the mid to late 60s as well, but I wouldn't class this as an essential Rolling Stones purchase at all. But moving on to another compilation, this is totally different. Elvis Costello, Girls, Girls, Girls on the Demon label. And this is a double CD crammed with 47 performances recorded between 1977 and 1986, and they've been chosen by and sequenced in non-chronological order by Elvis Costello, and it's hard to listen to this without using words such as genius. And Elvis Costello's liner notes are a joy to read as well, although you may need to get a magnifying glass out to read the very, very tiny print. Some facts I learnt from reading the liner notes. Mick Jones played guitar on Big Tears, which I didn't know. David Bedford did the string harmonies on Shipbuilding, and Chet Baker was responsible for the trumpet solo. And also Watching the Detectives was recorded just 2 weeks before Elvis Costello made the plunge and decided to become a professional musician. Next up, it's Dwight Yoakam, Last Chance for 1,000 Years. Dwight Yoakam's greatest hits from the 90s. and this is on the Reprise label. This really gels as an album, and thanks in part to the consistent production of Pete Anderson and also the lyrical sincerity on the songs written by Dwight Yoakam. There are a few too obvious covers for me though, and I could certainly have done without his version of Suspicious Minds and also Crazy Little Thing Called Love, although of course they were actually hits at the time. Next up, it's a bit of a strange one. John Schroeder Orchestra and Space Age Soul. I bought this mainly because it's on the Sequel label, which was a label that reissue label that I quite liked at the time. Cheesy but toe-tapping, easy listening instrumentals is what you get here. And John Schroeder was the producer of Sounds Orchestral. It's the sort of music you'd hear in the 1970s if you put the telly on during the day and caught the TV test card transmission, or you may hear in swanky hotel lifts. Soul Trek, the track has some nice guitar, strings and brass, and it's not a million miles away actually from the Love Unlimited Orchestra. The highlight for me is the cover of Edwin Starr's Agent 00 Soul, and which has a really good Northern Soul beat. And you can imagine go-go dancers in some cheesy 60s films such as Our Man Flint or that Bond spoof Casino Royale dancing to the tracks from this album. Next we've got The Best of the Beat, Beat This, and this is on the Go Feet label. And this was a real revelation to me because I was very sniffy about the beat back in the day when these songs first came out. It's aged particularly well. It's infectious music, fusing ska with then current new wave pop sensibility. They had an extraordinary run of hit singles in retrospect, taken from their albums I Just Can't Stop It, Weapon and Special Beat Service. So yeah, this was a real surprise, and I'm really enjoyed playing this one. Next up, it's Limbo by Throwing Muses on the 4AD label. And this was a 1996 album. It was their 7th album, and it doesn't reach the energy levels of some of their earlier albums, but I do like the poetic lyrics, and also Kristen Hirsch's vocals when she really lets rip. Clearly had an influence on the emerging Riot girl scene of the late 90s, early 2000s. So I'm thinking here of Kathleen Hanna, for example, from Bikini Kill. Standouts for me are Shark, Tar Kissers and Ruthie's Knocking. Next up, a bit of jazz by Burton, Corea, Matheny, HAYNES and Holland, Like Minds on the Concord label. The unwieldy title of the band sounds like they should be an American firm of lawyers. No one tries to hog the limelight at the other's expense, and Gary Burton's liner notes are a real treat, explaining how this album came about, and his comments on his colleagues are both very generous and genuinely sweet. And we'll end with R.E.M, Eponymous on the I.R.S label, and just marvel at the tracks on this CD. The word genius, I think, can certainly be applied to R.E.M during the I.R.S period. Those singles were groundbreaking, enigmatic, and blessed with just exquisite melodies which could make your spine tingle. And I think R.E.M at that time were as perfect as pop music can get. Okay, and that's it for today. And hopefully I'll be clear of this cold which has been bugging me for the last few days, and posting again in about a week or so. So until then, take care.